You're being arrested, okay?
Hundreds of elementary school children arrested over a 2-year time period.
If you didn't know what this video was about, and I just simply asked you, how young is too young when it comes to sex? Where does your mind go? What do you automatically think I'm talking about? Chances are pretty good you're thinking I'm talking about the age of consent. And in a sense, I am. American law, and I'm going to speak specific to Florida law, says that there is an age of consent that is set at 18. Now, there are some exceptions for 16 if the person's partner is under the age of, I think it's 23 off the top of my head. But the point is, let's just say 16. Nobody under 16 is deemed to be competent enough to make the decision to engage in sex. The law says they're just not capable of making that decision on their own, therefore sex is off the table. But is it always off the table? Because legislatures and by extension courts tell us that anyone under the age of 16 is incapable of consenting to sex, that 99 times out of 100 means that the teenager or the child is the victim. There are at this moment tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in jails, prisons, and on sex offender registries because an adult had some sort of interaction with a child. Even if the child or young person or teenager consented, by law, they cannot consent. Therefore, they are automatically victims. But at what point do these children go from being victims to the perpetrators? How old or how young can a child be when we say that that child is now responsible for their sexual actions? Where do we draw the line at? That's the fundamental question I'm asking at this point. Let's consider that for just a moment. During the decades that I was in prison, I ran into all kinds of men, dormitories full of men who had been imprisoned because of relationships with children or teenagers, where they swore up and down that the children had come on to them, that the teenagers had come on to them. They would tell me, well, we were at a party and the girl kept coming on to me and she was drunk. Or I was in a bar and the girl showed me ID from her college. It just turned out to be fake ID. The law doesn't care. In those circumstances, the law says that the children are victims and cannot consent to the sex act. But what about those instances when the children really did come on to the adults? Does the government recognize that that can possibly happen? Well, in fact, the government does recognize that it could possibly happen. Because in doing some research based on a case that recently happened in Florida, I came across cases where children as young as 13 were arrested for rape. I dug a little further, 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds, and a 7-year-old. A 7-year-old in the state of New York was arrested for rape. Are we kidding? I mean, really? So let me back up for a second and ask that fundamental question again. Is there ever a point when the children can be responsible for initiating the sex act? Well, the answer is yes. And just like when an adult initiates the sex act, it's a crime. When the child initiates a sex act, it's a crime. So the child doesn't win either way. So these people that are screaming that they're trying to protect children, what are you really after? Let's talk about that case that just happened in Florida. So about 2 weeks ago, in my home state of Florida, in a classroom, now picture the scene, classroom full of kids. Now we're talking about 10-year-old children. I don't know what grade that is, I guess 4th grade. A teacher and a guidance counselor. The guidance counselor comes in and a 10-year-old African-American boy jumps up, runs over to this guidance counselor to give her a hug. As he went up to hug her, she turned to the side, probably to get a side hug, and I guess he mistimed it, but when he reached his arms around her, he brushed her breast. Now, this was in front of a teacher who said she didn't see anything, and a classroom full of students who said they didn't see anything. Now, this woman, this guidance counselor, called the police on this child. And this young child, 10 years old, was immediately suspended from school and criminal prosecution was initiated. 10 years old. This is a child who almost guaranteed has not entered puberty yet. And I find it very difficult to believe that this young boy just jumped up out of his seat and ran over to this guidance counselor in front of all these witnesses with the intent of sexually assaulting her. I don't think this is about the child. I think this is about the woman. At what point do you say, oh my gosh, he accidentally brushed me? Have we gone so far in this politically correct culture where just even the most incidental touch is now considered rape? Because I've even heard that there have been cases prosecuted where someone looked at another person too hard, that people have committed rape with just their eyes. Have we really gone that far? Or are we going to acknowledge that this is not a simple issue? Because I know that in puritanical America, we want to believe that everything is black and white, everything is clear cut, and it's not. That's the reality. It's not. So now this child has been stigmatized in front of his friends. He's got a criminal record because at this point there's at least an investigation initiated against him, and it's in his record now, his school record. Now, you know that I like to be fair, I like to be objective, I like to look at all sides of the story. I don't have the guidance counselor's version of the events, and I don't have the child's version of events. She might have been very justified or felt very justified in making the allegation. The young man might have actually had the intent to reach out and grab her breast, though I find that to be a bit of a stretch. What has me confused is this: when I was a kid, to play doctor was considered completely normal. Children are curious, and when the hormones start pumping, that curiosity is magnified. When do we allow children to just be children? When do we allow children to explore their natural feelings and to find out what they themselves are all about, because they're trying to figure out the world around them the same? Should a child who's going through experimentation or trying to learn how the world functions, should they be punished? Should they be deemed as criminals just because they may have made a mistake? Guidance counselor means that this child needs to be guided. Teachers means that this child needs to be taught. And I think we're criminalizing too much, where we take every little incident, no matter how minor, and we blow it up into something else. The incident I mentioned a moment ago with the 7-year-old in New York that was arrested for rape, I don't have all the details. Obviously, they don't publish those kinds of details. But I can very easily envision that being a case of playing doctor and somebody's mother walked in. I can absolutely envision that. And I'm just saying, we've taken it in the United States, not just the United States, Canada and Australia too. We've taken it so far that everything to do with the body is sexual. And everything that is sexual is a crime. You've just gone too far. And it really is time for us to push back a little and stop and look at this issue with its nuances, because there is always more to the story, and things are just not cut and dry, clearly black and white. Because, let me say this in closing, I really wonder if this kid would have been expelled and arrested if it had been a white kid. Just wondering. So, just something to think about. Hope you enjoy this video. I hope it's informative to you. And I hope it really gets you thinking. I would love to hear some feedback in the comments. So until next time, my friends, be smart, be safe, and don't put yourself in those positions. Take care, everybody. Cheers. All right, hey, everybody. I just finished filming that video, and as Gus and Kylie and I were walking out of the castle, we were talking and something struck me, and I want to make an addendum to this. Because these do-gooders, and I know that they've got the best intentions, but these do-gooders that are constantly screaming about children's rights and protecting children, I'm going to ask that question: what about the children's rights? Because once these children start getting into the age that they're curious, don't they have a right to learn? Don't they have a right to ask questions? Don't they have a right to make mistakes? And when they hit puberty and their bodies are just overflowing with hormones and they, quite frankly, need a sexual release, not with an adult, but don't they have the right to learn their own bodies? Don't they have a right to enjoy their own bodies? Don't they have a right to find out how their bodies actually work and find out who they are? So if all these do-gooders that want to scream about protecting children's rights, let's talk about children's rights. Maybe they should be defined a little differently than they've been defined in the past. Because here in Europe, where I live, boy, the laws make a great deal more sense. They recognize that at 14, these children have sexual urges and they have sexual needs, and here they're allowed to express themselves. I'm just saying, just food for thought. So thank you. Thank you for letting me share my thoughts. Ciao.